Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome to the Back of the Range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 96. Well, we are rapidly approaching our 100th episode, which is absolutely incredible, but we aren't there quite yet. Got a few more to go, and I'm very excited to bring you more episodes each and every week here at the Back of the Range. Can't thank you all enough for the support I've received since returning home from the Walker Cup. Apparently, you want me to do more videos. I'll see what I can do about that, but in all seriousness, the growth of this podcast has exceeded all expectations, so let's keep it going. Before I get to this week's episode, let's do a couple Mojo updates. Congrats to Cole Hammer and Andy Ogletree. They will be representing Team USA at the Spirit International Amateur Golf Championships in November. So good luck to those guys, Walker Cup teammates. Let's see if they can keep it rolling for Team USA. Congrats to Stuart Hagestad, had a great run at the U.S. Mid-Am, made it all the way to the semifinals. Get used to seeing him in future U.S. Mid-Ams for many years to come. Also, a lot of my friends made it onto Team Florida. That team has been announced in the Southeast Challenge matches. They'll be facing off against Georgia and Alabama. 5 of the 12 men on that team have been previous guests on the Back of the Range, so congrats to the entire team, especially Scott Turner, Chip Brook, Mark Dull, Mike Finster, and Steve Carter. If you'd like to follow those matches, head over to fsga.org. And finally, congrats to Isaiah Salinda and Akshay Bhatia. They are making their professional debuts at the Safeway Open on the PGA Tour this weekend, so all the best to them. As you might have noticed, we still have lots of giveaways that we're going to do. I was able to give away some ball markers and towels from the Walker Cup, which I think that everyone enjoyed. I actually have some more stuff lying around that I'm going to get out very soon. I'm actually going out of town again for a bachelor party golf weekend in Vegas. Yes, I will try and make it back in one piece. So you're going to see a lot of posts on Instagram. I'm going to try and pick up some souvenirs here and there from the different courses we're going to play. So keep following along on social media, especially Instagram. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. All that information, as you know, is available in the show notes of this episode. If you get confused, if you want to go to one spot to get all this information, go to our website, thebackoftherange.com. Reviews. Keep leaving them in Apple Podcasts. Tell me what you think about these episodes. Who do you want me to interview next? What tournament do you want me to attend next? Remember, if you don't tell me what you want, I can't deliver it. So get involved in this podcast. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Remember, we have those towels and hats for sale on the website. If you enjoy the podcast and you want to support the Back of the Range, pick up some merch for you and a friend to wear on the golf course. When someone asks you, what's the Back of the Range Golf Podcast? Well, now you can start a conversation and spread the word. That's how this thing works. So, our guest this week was also at Hoylake for the Walker Cup, watching the U.S. team come from behind to capture the win. While I'm sure he was rooting for all the guys in the American squad, he probably paid a little more attention to the Stanford seniors, Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salinda, that helped lead the Cardinal to the national championship. This week's guest is Stanford men's golf coach Conrad Ray. Before leading the Cardinal to 2 national championships, the first one being in 2007, and before his stint on the Kornferry Tour and his appearance in the 2005 U.S. Open, he played collegiately at Stanford and was part of that 1994 national championship team that contained Nota Begay, Casey Martin, and Tiger Woods. Conrad is also the host of Golf U on SiriusXM, which is the only show dedicated to college golf on the PGA Tour radio network. We spoke about his coaching philosophy, some of the lighter moments of his career, and a few highlights from the magical run of last season that resulted in a national championship. So let's get to it, Coach. I'm sorry I missed you at the Walker Cup. We were both kind of busy enjoying that, but I'm glad I was able to capture you here at the Back of the Range. How are you?
Great to be with you. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, fun to talk a little college golf, and yeah, that trip to the Walker Cup was something special for all of us here at the Stanford program, for sure.
I bet. You know, I got to talk to Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salinda before you guys kind of went on your run in the spring, and then got to catch up with them a little bit before the Walker Cup, since they were on that short list to make the team at Hoylake. Walk me through just your days leading up to traveling over to Hoylake. When did you make the decision? I'm assuming you made the decision to go over there right after they got named to the team.
Well, I've got 3 girls at home and a pretty demanding teenager schedule of soccer games and tournaments and stuff. And believe it or not, I had to miss my my wedding anniversary. So my wife, thank God, is a saint, and she understood.
That's a bold play, Coach. That's a bold move.
It was a bold move. I'm still trying to earn my way out of the doghouse, but it's all good. I booked the ticket in pretty short notice, actually, just with the fall season coming at us, and was able to recruit my dad, Gary, who's a great college golf fan and has been there every step of the way as we've recruited these guys to Stanford and has gotten to know their families. So my dad decided, who's retired and a golf nut, he decided to hop on a plane from the Midwest. And then he recruited my brother-in-law who played college golf. And so we got off the plane in Manchester and had a couple days of golf ourselves on the front end, where we had a chance to play, get up to Lytham, which is an amazing place. We played Fairhaven and Formby, and then made our way down to the matches. And it was just a really fun 4 or 5 days of golf on the Lancashire coast, both playing and watching. And it was cool too to turn up. I would say that if you are a true golf nerd or a golf nut, a Walker Cup on foreign soil is about as good as it gets. I think that the appreciation for those matches is something that really struck me. The locals of Hoylake turned out, walking in the fairways, being right up close and personal to the action. It was just an extraordinary situation at Royal Liverpool, and I guess maybe made a little bit better by the U.S. coming out on top for the first time, I think, since 2007. And so, proud of our guys and cool that they had a strong contribution to the U.S. effort.
Yeah, it was really incredible experience for me. And then, seeing Brandon and Isaiah, and then actually you have one of your seniors this year, Henry Shemp, was there in tow walking the fairways. I got to meet him. So he's coming back for his senior season. Were you nervous for the guys as they were playing this final, putting this final chapter together of their amateur careers? Were you nervous for them, or were you able to kind of relax and enjoy the atmosphere, knowing that, hey, this is on them. This isn't a Stanford event. What were kind of your emotions walking and watching their final matches?
I was having a blast. I mean, I actually wasn't very nervous at all. I got a little nervous, frankly, watching a few of them get ready, prepare. Like, it was funny. My emotions were really relaxed, and I was taking in the matches and enjoying, because a lot of the kids that were on the GB&I side are kids that we see and compete against and have relationships with as well. But, like, for example, watching Isaiah Salinda warm up for his match going into Sunday singles, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. His ball was curving all over the place. So it was like I was really chomping at the bit from the gallery rope, trying to get his attention and maybe have a chat with him and give him a couple thoughts on, what I've seen him, do over the course of time, and maybe help him a little bit. But other than that small moment, I was pretty relaxed and just trying to take it all in and, enjoy some food from the food trucks. And,
I found those too. Yeah.
Yeah. We started the woo chant, which seemed to be infectious even amongst the locals after a couple sideways looks from a few astute RNA members walking the fairways with their double-breasted sport coats on.
Of course.
Beyond that, the woo chant took hold and was warranted, as he played really well. So, those were kind of some of the things that were going on for me. I just enjoyed the whole thing. And, especially too, that's such a course that from your first glance, you don't really appreciate how special of a place Hoylake is. But as you walk the grounds and you see some of the shot demands and imagine it, I think the U.S. squad got lucky with no wind.
Absolutely.
But you think about how narrow some of those fairways are, and add another 20 miles an hour of coastal breeze, that place could really grow some teeth. So anyway, it was a cool couple days for me, and just being over there, with two guys and their families that I really care about, and my own family there is pretty neat. I definitely checked a box off the bucket list, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to get to the next Walker Cup in 2021 down here in South Florida. A little bit of an easier commute for me. We'll get to that, but I wanted to, we're talking about Wu and Celinda. They're heading off to the pro ranks now. I want to reflect and kind of look back a little bit at your professional career. You played for Stanford. You're part of the national championship team in 94. Get out of there at 97, and then it looks like you take over the reign, so to speak, at Stanford in the 04-05 season. Can you fill in the gap a little bit between when you played professionally and then how you got into coaching in 04?
Yeah, no, my story is unique, I think. I was, going back a little bit, I was a recruited walk-on here at Stanford. I was lucky because in some senses, unfortunate for the person that didn't get in, but Coach Goodwin had an extra spot. His plan was originally in my class to not really do a bunch of heavy recruiting, knowing that Tiger was already verbally committed to Stanford and he had a good chance of getting in the following year. But he missed on a candidate through admission, through the early read, and I think he was kind of on the sideline trying to decide if he was even going to take anyone. And I was just pestering him enough, I think, for him to say, hey, if you can get into school and get your SAT score up, and I'll give you a walk-on spot. I might ask you to shag balls and clean the van and carry some luggage, but that's all I needed to hear. And so for me, I was lucky enough to do that, and then had this really fun experience. As definitely not the best player on the team, but a guy that was willing to work hard and learn a lot. My game got a lot better while I was at Stanford, and watching some of those great All-Americans go at it, and had a good couple final years of college, and ended up, having a respectful college career. I decided to turn pro. I ended up hanging my hat down in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, which today it's one of my favorite all-time places. Have a ton of great friends there. And it was just a place where I could call home base as I was traveling around the Southeast, mostly playing the mini tours and trying to qualify out onto the web.com, Hogan Tour for a year and out on the web.com. And that's really where I focused my attention. I had some limited status out there over the course of 5 or 6 years, conditional card a couple years. Actually, my best year was a year I didn't have status. I think I either Monday qualified or top 25 into 11 or 12 events during that season. And then all of a sudden in 2000, I get this call, like as you mentioned, in 2003, 2004, and I was cruising away. I actually just gotten a sponsor's exemption into the event in Minnesota, my home state, on the web.com tour. And I had a conversation with the athletic director out here, and at the time who was running the search, one of the associates, and he said, hey, you do us a favor if you just put your name on the list. We need a new golf coach. We want to find someone with Stanford connections. And would you take a flight out and just reconnect and maybe go through the interview process? Because we've talked to some of your old teammates who are out on the PGA Tour, and your name keeps popping up. And I said, well, yeah, they're doing a lot better playing than I am. I might as well check this out. And at the time, Noda and Casey had his card, and Tiger was out there, and Joel Kreibel,
Yeah.
So all these guys were out on the tour. And I think for me, I was flattered that happened. I was kind of I wasn't really working at it, if you say that, but
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, I'll come out and interview. And I was lucky enough to reconnect with our athletic director and a few key supporters, and our AD at the time. He was a wonderful guy, Ted Leland. He wasn't a golf guy, but he did wonderful. He's really good at finding good people, I think, and understood that the culture of Stanford is unique and special. And so he basically, after that interview process, offered me the job. Definitely experience based on the coaching side. I was a rookie. I didn't even know what the NC2A manual was. But I told him, give me a year. You can pay me what you want, and if we don't get better, you can fire me. I was like, hey, I can always go back and play.
So it's almost like you took the same, not to cut you up, but it's almost like you took the same approach to coaching at Stanford as you did playing at Stanford. Like, look, I'll clean the van, I'll shag balls, or I'll do this. Just get me in the door. Yeah,
I do think that. I think I've always kind of been one of those guys. I'm luckily my parents, raised me that way, but I do think that, you just get, a finite number of opportunities. So you got to go for it, and I try and preach that to my team now. It's you got to sometimes put your put your ego, your courage, you got to muster your courage or whatever it is to get there. And for me, I was just like, hey, this is a cool opportunity. And I was smart enough to look at the position and say, hey, this job at Stanford might not open up for the next 30 or 40 years. And it's my alma mater. And so I was like, well, give me a shot. We'll see what happens. And then I was, feel very fortunate, but I had some great guys on the team that I inherited, some wonderful guys that just needed a little shot in the arm, some confidence, some belief in themselves. And really someone too that have really celebrated this idea. And that's what we hang our hat on here is that, school and golf and high level achievement in both are not mutually exclusive. That's really what our mantra is. And I'm like, guys, like there's no excuse that you can't look yourself in the mirror and expect to be a first team all conference player and be at Stanford, but there was definitely a mindset when I took over the program, I think for a little bit that combination is a hard one to make, or you can't make it. And I think it's actually opposite. I think that challenge that our guys face for the right guys is something that spurs them on to success. So that was that's kind of been my mantra from the beginning. And we just dove in and, a great young recruit named Rob Gruby showed up on the farm. He was like third generation Stanford family, and he was looking at Wake and Duke and a few places back east. He actually went to Robert Louis Stevenson School in Monterey. And it's quite ironic. My senior year roommate, fraternity brother, the Small World Connection, used to tell me about this kid when we were on the team. This kid growing up in Hinsdale, Illinois, named Rob Gruby, his cousin. And this kid was a pretty good junior player, and he really wanted to play at Stanford someday. And this is when I was on the team. And so fast forward, here I am. Rob Gruby shows up as kind of our standout freshman. Ends up being a 4-time All-American. Zach Miller was on that team, who had some time on the PGA Tour. And then Joseph Bramlett shows up, and Jordan Cox show up kind of as my first big recruiting class that I was in charge of a year or so later. And so then that's what led to this group that we put together that was able to go and be successful and win the national championship in 2007. So even though that was a 3 short year period from when I started to when we won, I feel like those things were already kind of in the works, and I definitely benefited from all that as a coach. So that's the quick story of it all.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because you think about now fast forward, I guess you're entering your 16th season at Stanford, and there's all the All-Americans and the Pac-12 Players of the Year and the Scholar Athletes and all the accolades that go with it. But when you look back at what you were like as a coach in 04-05, or even let's just call it 07 when you win the national championship, to compare to now in 2019, I mean, looking back at that guy in 2007, just kind of trying to figure it out as he goes, can you think back to some of maybe the rookie coach mistakes you might have made, or the head scratchers that you can look back? I mean, not to throw you completely under the team van here, but there's got to be one thing that maybe stands out, like, man, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, I was pretty hardcore from the beginning. I've definitely softened in terms of my, just my understanding that every guy does it a little different. I had kind of one notion in my mind of how it should look and how you should do it.
Okay.
And I was pretty vocal about that. And I think I was fortunate because some guys on the team needed some of that direction and structure. And so, I was pretty hard on the guys early on, whether that's, the fitness levels that we try and achieve, whether that's the amount of volume of practice, and we also, I had some good advice along the way. I remember early on in my coaching career, I reconnected with an old friend named Neil Smith, who has had some time out on the PGA Tour and is kind of a performance coach, sports psychologist, if you will. And, one of the things I used as kind of the Bible was his development model. And I think it was a precursor to what you see every PGA Tour pro doing today. And that's really taking a holistic approach to development. And so I leaned on that and leaned on him hard. We focused on what we could control and not what we couldn't control, and I think at a place like Stanford, where a lot of it is results based and oriented, that was refreshing for our guys, that we were really going to measure ourselves by how hard we worked, how much we handled our own business, not really by what scores we shot. And I think that there was a definite shift in kind of culture a little bit there.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think it helped our guys who were in a spot of needing some time to get better, to be able to reward themselves for what they were doing. So, I look back on my early coaching career, and a guy like Neil Smith, I would have been floundering, trying to figure it out. But, today, the other part of his teaching, and he's put this together with work with other people as well, but he's got a model called the performance pie, and his performance pie, and I still use it today, is basically just a diagram that shows that, it's 7 pieces to the pie, and those 7 pieces all equal good golf. And in the center of that pie is a happy and healthy golfer, and whether it's swing mechanics, rest and active relaxation, nutrition, equipment, parental support, all those things need to be in order for a good college player to play their best.
Sure.
and a good pro. And, I didn't just go at these guys with, hey guys, you can't hit a 5-iron on the green from 200. Like, what the heck? I wasn't going at them as that was in the back of my mind, but, right. I didn't take the frontal approach there. And so, we just focused on those controllables, and we still try and do that. And that was kind of the start, I think, of, how I run the program, and it helped me understand how to do it best.
I'm going to ask you about a 5-iron from 200 yards that was hit by your freshman, Dilette Tilabuya.
Yeah. And
I'm going to ask you about that a little later. But before
Sure.
I get to your national championship in 2019, how do you balance between, being maybe the boss of the team, or the leader of the team, and establishing, boundaries, but also have a little bit, getting a little bit closer to the guys, being somewhat of a friend, of a buddy that you can kind of pal around with? Like, how do you kind of balance a little bit of that? Because I know you can't just be sitting up on high as the unapproachable boss of the team. How do you find the connection?
Yeah, it is a people person type of job. I think I've been, one of the things that has been a big part of our program are the assistant coaches that I've had here over time. And, we've had some guys cycle in, cycle out. I think that's driven by a bunch of different reasons, guys on the rise in their careers, the cost of living in the Bay Area, just guys I've made some hires, kind of out of the box hires as assistant coaches, but I've done that really thoughtfully, I think, or I've tried to. All these guys have brought different things to the table. And even if you look back at my first assistant coach, I hired a guy named Sam Purrier, who was running the Eastlake Junior Golf program before it was taken over by the First Tee. And he came from such a different place than a lot of our guys did in terms of who was matriculating to Stanford. So
right.
Sam's life experience, and where he came from really added to, I think, our group. And I'm proud of him. I mean, he was the first African-American coach at the Division I level, or at least the Power 5 level that I'm aware of, in a long, long time. And so, for him to then go on and be the head coach at Michigan State and have, make his life work out of coaching golf, is a cool deal. And, so like Sam brought a lot of stuff to the table. And then we had guys that, maybe have been alums of the program that have a perspective. This last cycle, we had a guy named Matt Bordas, who was basically fresh out of the Marine Corps as a Special Forces team commander. So, that those assistants have been a big part of that connection with the team. I've tried to make it my mission to make a conscious effort to connect with every kid that I have here, and not have that, that door be that tough to get by or whatever. I'm smart enough, I think, to know that I'm getting older every year. And I need to keep working hard at that, because the kids stay the same age. And that also is true as I go through the buffet line at the tournament too. They're eating like 19-year-olds, and I need to eat like I should be as a mid 40-year-old. So, the point is that I think just having that connection with your players is really, really important. And the guys that I admire in the coaching ranks around the country are guys that do that really well. And if you don't have that, it's difficult, when you're in the heat of the battle, or you're in that moment when you can really make an impression or teach a lesson or give them something that will help them for a long, long time in their golf game, or in life. If you don't have that connection, you don't have those moments to share. So that's an important part, I think, about being a good college golf coach.
Well, I have to ask about, 2019. As I said earlier, I spoke with Brandon and Isaiah. This was before, I believe, your Vegas event in March. And looking back after, now that all that's transpired, with winning the national championship and all that success, but I actually went back and listened to that episode, and they didn't sound as chipper as they did, when I talked to them after the national championship. I guess that time around February, March, before that Vegas tournament where you guys turned the corner and then won out, they kind of sounded a little bit down in the dumps. I think I remember them saying something like, well, if we make it to regionals, they weren't as optimistic about the way their senior season was going to wrap up. That's how the players were. What were you going through around February, March when things were not looking great?
Well, it's funny
what are you dealing with internally, and then how do you communicate the right message to your team?
Yeah, it's hard to communicate that. I remember standing up at some function or fundraiser and telling a bunch of big time Stanford supporters that this is the worst, best team I've ever had, and they were kind of looking at me like, what's this guy saying? And I guess all I was trying to communicate was I really, and I don't want to claim that I had a false sense of anything, but I really never doubted this team in a weird way. I knew that we had to figure out some stuff, and I knew that if we were going to be the best team that we could be, you needed to have all cylinders firing, and that's what we were able to get going. I used the stat. I think the stats basically support that. In the fall, we played a very competitive schedule, and there actually, I don't think that there was a single week where both Brandon Wu and Isaiah Salinda finished both in the top 20. And they had their good weeks, but they also had some other weeks too, and or events. And so, for us, when both those guys started playing well, that's when it kind of really started. And they worked hard in the off season. We did a lot of things team related that I think spurred that on, whether it was in the weight room or here on campus with our practice regimens that we maybe don't normally do. And they got it going, which is really cool. And then all of a sudden you get guys like Henry Schimpf and David Schneider and Dalet, Telebeliev, just tossing in rounds here and there that were huge rounds at the time. So I think people started getting the vibe of like, let's get on a roll. Let's try and make winning something that we're used to. I really do think that winning is a habit in college golf, especially in the springtime. It's rare that you see a team not win in the regular season and then go make a run at the national finals. So, we wanted to get on that early in the new year, and they were able to do that. So a lot of things had to happen, but I think probably the sum of the sum was that both those guys, Isaiah and Brandon, really started playing well at the same time.
The thing with the national championship I want to ask you about, obviously you get through the stroke play portion, you run through the matches. So you run through the matches, you get through Wake Forest, you get through Vanderbilt, and then obviously you beat Texas. You won all three sessions, 3 and 2, so could not have been any closer than that. I believe I was watching a clip and just kind of seeing, during the semifinal match, you were out there with Gillette during his match where he won 1-up, and we talked about this 5-iron from 200, and he birdies the last hole. But I think it was mentioned that Coach Ray really was coaching hard these last couple holes because you were out there with him, and I believe he lost, I think, like 4 holes in a row, or just he really he was kind of the match was kind of getting away from him. And for people that want to know, like, okay, what does a college golf coach actually do? Like, okay, he recruits the team and gets them to the tournament, and he'll give a speech here and there. But once they get out there and they start playing, it's really on the players. Not asking you to take credit for anything because he has to hit the shots and he has to make that putt. But what were you doing during those last few holes that someone could say, oh yeah, that's what the coach just added to this moment?
Well, I think I would back up a second and say I actually think that a good college golf coach, the ones I respect and look up to and try and emulate, actually do have a lot of bearing on how their team manages themselves around the course and the strategy involved and
sure.
the precursor to that. I think that's I think that's where the game's really evolved to, because there was a long period of time where a college golf coach was just the van driver. But I think the guys that are winning today try hard not to be that van driver, but they, I guess to dig into that situation with Daulette, it was a culmination. I mean, it was a great shot. Don't get me wrong, but in any other circumstance, it's a shot he hits, a couple times out of 10. But based on the circumstance, I think that's why I've said that that's one for the ages for our program, because of the fact that, the story of him caving in his driver on the first tee shot of that round, him hanging in there, trying to figure out all the details about replacing a crack, is a cracked driver a damaged driver? I've learned a lesson there, in the heat of the moment,
right.
And that's kind of since come out on the PGA Tour a little bit. But anyway, Daulette battles the situation with his driver, still playing great. He gets a 4-up lead, and then the oil starts to leak. He, as we say, kind of blew a tire in turn 3. And so we're just trying to get to the house, and I was with him with that. And he was really asking me for a lot of information. I sometimes just am there to walk and encourage and, hang out, but he really wanted some help. And so we kind of were trying to get this match in the books. And then after, knowing his opponent dumping it in the river on 17, all he really had to do was hit it about 45 to 90 degrees to the right and keep it on dry land. He somehow hit his ball right in the river after his opponent, and on 17. And then he had this crazy one-shot penalty, with his ball like 2.5 inches onto the fringe. He nicks his ball with a practice stroke.
Yeah.
So he had to add a shot. And that's a crazy rule, right? I think if he's, on the green and that happens, it's no penalty.
Exactly right.
And it's just so much stuff was going on and flying around, and we knew that was the penultimate match, right? So for him to get up there with a driver he'd hit 2 other times ever in his life, hit it in the fairway, and then have this shot at hand to be able to kind of close the match out was epic. And so great shot, great putt. We all celebrate, and the rest is history for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing that I noticed about that is because I watched that, I've seen that putt several times. I've seen the reaction of your team. And what I find interesting is when you see the guys celebrating in the Stanford shirts, it's not just the guys that were actually playing. You had additional players that were, not in the starting lineup, come down to Arkansas to watch this. I believe it was actually for the finals, so they weren't there for Daulette, but you had players come in just to be a part of it. I would imagine, yeah. I mean, I know winning, you're very proud of winning it, but I'd imagine you have to be very proud of the fact that you have guys in your team that were not even playing that wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, it was cool, and they surprised us too. I mean, they booked those tickets the day of on their own dime and got on a flight, basically getting in at like 1 a.m. the night before into Fayetteville rather. And, it was so cool to see them turn up. They actually slept on the floor in Isaiah's room. And then all of a sudden I'm going to get the van at like 5:30 in the morning. And I see these guys roll out after a couple of 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And it was just the vibe of the whole thing. They wanted to be there and be part of it. And, I think it didn't take much watching to see how strong the crowds were, kind of from Texas and Oklahoma. Sure. and the geographical draw. And that's something that, you appreciate having a chance to see some of these national championship. I always joke with Alan Bratton at Oklahoma State. I'm like, Mike Holder, the AD, gives everyone off, in the department the day off and maybe buys them a bus ticket as far as I know. It's like, sure. It's amazing how the Cowboys travel to follow their golf team. And we felt that a little bit too with the kind of the proximity to Texas all week. And so, for even if it was just 2 guys being really loud and raucous and friends of these guys that were out competing, it made a big difference. And the vibe was high and they were focused on doing everything that they could do to leave it out there and win a title.
I think I asked Coach Laura Ianello of Arizona last year what the evening was like after winning their national championship. And, those Lady Wildcats are they're really out there. They took Ubers to McDonald's and got shakes and fries. So they clearly out there on the West Coast are wild partiers. I know you might have to clean it up maybe, but tell me a little bit about what it was like that night.
Well, we had a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a Bonnie and Clyde moment because the storms came in. We played very early.
Yeah, that's right.
Think most people that were tuning in or had their DVR set on the Golf Channel to watch were surprised to find out when they turned it on that we were already almost done with the match.
Yeah.
But, and it was literally, it's amazing how much we ask of our student athletes. I've always been a proponent. I love the national championship, but it feels like, being there a number of times, it feels like we've got like 20 pounds of flour and a 10-pound sack. We just try and do so much. And these guys, then, we kept track of our miles walked during the NC2A championship, and this is without elevation, and I hit 86 miles. So, you think about that over the course of 7 days, carrying your clubs, no sleep, you're running on adrenaline. But anyway, we turned up that last day. We were fortunate to come out on top against a really talented Texas team, and we all knew it. And all of a sudden the storms blow in, massive rainstorms and wind and everything. And I think half the media tent left, and the rest of the half that stuck around. We had a few questions, ate lunch, and I get a call we were lucky enough to get a private flight back to San Jose. And the pilot called and said, "Hey, you better get out here. We're not going to get out tonight." And so we literally, in our team unis, threw the trophy in the van, and we're flying down the highway to try and get to the airport to hit this window of time to be able to get out. And so, I mean, we were back on campus, almost by 4 or 5 in the afternoon. It was a wild day to think about. So, it was really quick, and we celebrated that night. We had a neat reception. A bunch of people in our athletic department turned up and welcomed us back along with our women's team. And we celebrated a little bit there, watched a little bit of the telecast that was still on. And then who knows what the guys got into that night. That's one of the coaching moments where you
don't need to know. You don't need to know.
I don't need to know. No questions asked. I'm sure they had a great time, and I know that it was one that we will still be celebrating for years to come. That's for sure.
That's great. Well, you mentioned, it was such a great experience there. Before I get on to maybe what you're going to be doing for the next or this year's team, and then teams moving forward, I wanted to ask you this question, which doesn't seem to get addressed often. You have Brandon and Isaiah turning professional, and they're going to make their professional debuts. I'm just curious, and I think a lot of listeners would be curious, what is your involvement at the time where these seniors, or even if someone is leaving the team early, like Patrick Rogers did after his junior season? What is the interaction or involvement that you have to guide them from the college ranks to the professional ranks? Are you, advising them or helping them with maybe equipment or schedules or picking an agent? It seems now you see these kids in college, then, okay, now they're on tour and there's their deal, and it looks like it just happens seamlessly. Can you maybe speak to how things like that occur, maybe not in particular or detailed with Isaiah and Brandon, but just in general, maybe what your interaction has been over the years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's one of the hats that a lot of coaches wear. I have no issue talking about it. I think that the rules permit prospective professionals to have conversations with agents prior to the end of their amateur career or their collegiate career. And so I take this stance that I'd like to be involved. Early on in the process, if a player of mine is expressing the desire to turn pro, or he thinks that there might be some opportunities to meet with managers, I'd rather be in the know than in the not. I think sometimes agents and people in the professional ranks don't really understand the NC2A rules. So I'd rather be there advising and cautioning them and that type of thing. And typically what I've done with a lot of the guys is just offer up, being a fly on the wall and someone that can give them kind of a third party opinion, non-agnostic, just like, or agnostic, I guess. So, just like telling them that, hey, this is what I see or hear. And I've seen a lot of these guys come pitch other players and talk about what services a management group might offer, or what a club deal might look like, those types of things. And I still have a lot of contacts personally from my days playing professionally. And it's amazing how small the golf circles and world is in terms of that.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a process. I really feel like also too, I can be a grounding post to kind of, it's easy. I think if you're a young guy and you have a bunch of people coming at you, knocking on your door to lose track of what really matters. And that's like, hey, you got to play well. You got to just do your own business. And, you want to almost feel like your professional career is a natural progression. It's what you should be doing versus what you want to do. And so, it's fascinating though. It's grown, that those conversations have grown more and more because of the young guys on the PGA Tour going out there and making such a quick splash. So it's a serious conversation that goes on over the course of time, I think, for the guys that are doing it the right way. And but for those guys in particular this year, I was part of that conversation, and basically we welcome in those people that want to have conversations. We do it at Stanford, we do it in our conference room here, and they just come in and talk to the family and the player about what they're all about and why, and try and start that relationship. But you're right, it is pretty seamless. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes before a player ultimately says, "Hey, I'm a professional," and signs an endorsement contract or calls himself a player, or someone that's going to play for money rather. So it's been fun for me. I like that stuff. I think that there is kind of this role. Some coaches don't really choose to be part of it at all, and they don't think that that's their business. But I always tell my guys, I'm like, the minute you step on campus, you're going to be a Stanford golfer the rest of your career. And so I'd rather have those guys really have those foundational blocks in a good spot and off to a good start than have a guy floundering and curious or making a few false steps.
You mentioned, once they step on campus, Stanford, they're Stanford golfers for life. This kind of just hit me. I remember talking to Brandon about it and Isaiah, how, Stanford is so challenging and rewarding academically. It never really crossed their mind ever to leave early just because I've worked so hard with this. I want to get my degree. Do you think you have an advantage at Stanford because of that reason? People, kids that come there, yeah, they want to compete and play athletics or play golf at the highest level, but I don't want to go through all that Stanford is going to ask of me just to not get my degree. I want to be there the whole time. Is that an advantage, or do you feel that's an advantage for you?
Yeah, I don't, I think it's something that we can definitely hang our hats on. I think if we're doing the right job in recruiting, that's something that the guys see and they understand, and they're mature enough to see that the pro tour is not going anywhere. And I always used to use the line, hey, a degree from Stanford is like the ultimate insurance policy if golf doesn't work out. But you've been around, Ben, and I think everyone sees that, being a professional golfer at the highest level these days requires a pretty high level of acumen in, surrounding yourself with good people, making tough decisions with limited information, the work ethic that goes involved with that. I always also mention, my good old friend and old teammate, Tiger at his height. You think about the operation that he was in charge of and still is. I mean, if that's not running a business, I don't know what is, right? So, so for me, it's both. It's a great insurance policy if you don't play professional golf, but if you want to be number one in the world, I think a Stanford degree will serve you well. So, it does create, for the right guy, a great way to talk about it and to draw people here. I think the evening out factor is that there's not many of those kids around the country or the world that ultimately can pass through the filter of admission and have the golf that we're looking for. So it's a kind of a self-selecting process. And I honest truth that there's literally probably only 2 to 3 kids a year in the entire world that have both of those check boxes. And so, for us, we have to be good at finding those kids and then kind of capitalizing and making sure that they end up on campus.
You mentioned recruiting, and I know you've done, shockingly, you've done other podcasts before you've done mine, and it hurts, but it seems good though. Okay, good. Well, a question that I know you've been asked, the obligatory Tiger Woods question, and I've given it some thought of how I can ask a similar question to, tell me a Tiger story. And, I kind of want to ask this question. You've had all these great alums. You've had, you got, Nota Begay, and you got Kreibel and Casey Martin, and then Patrick Rogers, and of course, Tiger Woods. I know that they come back to campus. So my question for you is this: have you ever had to pull one of these alums aside and say, look, I need you to be a little bit more of a role model here and kind of, be the adult here, and less of you hanging out with these kids and reliving your college days? I mean, have you had to maybe get something out of them? Like, this is why you're here. You're here to help me recruit, not to spend the weekend with college guys on the course, yucking it up. Have you ever had to
No, I one of the things that underlines our program is having fun,
Right.
and I actually, if there's anything, I wish when those guys come back that they have more fun. I think that our place should be a welcoming place. And, all those guys that you mentioned are good guys and they like to have a good laugh. And, obviously Tiger's in that bucket. I think that's one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough, actually, is Tiger's sense of humor. I think when that comes out, people really are drawn to him. I always tell my one quick little Tiger story, and I thought about it recently when I was at the U.S. Amateur at Pinehurst. I was super lucky to get in as an alternate in the 2005 Open, and I bugged him. He was playing great and was at the top of his game. In fact, he contended on Sunday, and Michael Campbell ended up coming out on top. But looking back early in that week, on Monday morning, he had texted me and said, "Meet me for a 6 a.m. practice round and don't be late." So I had just come off the national championship, and my game was as rusty as it gets. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I tried all this time to get in the Open, never played, and then ultimately get in my first year coaching as an alternate. So there you have it. And it's, I get there, it's half dark out. I'm trying to hit balls and I'm pouring sweat. It's a hot, humid morning. And it's a true story. It's 3 balls to warm up. Now, granted, he probably got up at 3 o'clock and had worked out and done his commercial already or had some calls or whatever. But he hit a sand wedge right over the flag from 100 yards. He hit a 5-iron off the 200 marker. I mean, just absolutely striped. And then a driver off the back range fence. And he's like, okay, let's go. And my caddy's over getting coffee or doing something. And I'm like scrambling, like I didn't even know, what I was up to.
Right.
So he's striding to the first tee, and we go down through this tunnel and walk out onto the first tee. And I kid you not, there were probably about 2,000 people waiting for him. That the Sunday paper had basically let the word out that Tiger was going to be practicing at 6 a.m. and everyone was going to try and beat the heat. And you've probably been to Pinehurst, and it's a golf-hungry place.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's the worst possible situation for you right now. I mean, it's not like it's awful.
I am in the lion's den at this stage, and I walk out from this tunnel and I look at these people and I don't even know where the club face is. And I was as nervous as I've ever been in my entire life. I mean, I even more nervous than with my wife walking down the aisle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill someone. And so Tiger, to his credit, one of the funnier moments of the entire, time there, he came over and he literally, so people could see, he grabbed me by the shirt collar and he said, listen, he's talking quite loudly. And he said, hey, listen, all these people up here, they're here to watch me and they don't know who the hell you are. So there's no reason to be nervous. And the crowd erupted and we all had a good laugh, and it broke the ice a bit for me, and I could take a breath. And I still had to yell 4 off the first tee. That's the funny part of it. I hit a big hook into the left gallery. So,
of course.
Anyway, there you have it. That's my Tiger Woods funny story for the day. But he's got a great sense of humor, and I love that about him. And I think when that comes out, people really enjoy it.
I know we have limited time. I appreciate you sharing that story. I was hoping for one, like Patrick Rogers hanging out watching movies with the guys until 3 a.m. or something like that. But that's okay. Well, that story works. We have checked the box off. But I want to ask you. You also have your own radio show on Sirius XM Channel 92. It's Golf U, and you talk about all things college golf and junior golf and the amateur game, and very passionate about it myself. And I'm just curious. I mean, there's plenty of topics we can get into, and I know we have limited time, but what is one of the most popular questions maybe that you get from parents or juniors since you've started that radio show?
Well, I think what people really enjoy about the show, and it leads to the questions that they ask, is just really digging a little deeper into the philosophies of college golf coaches and how they approach developing their players and their team. I think, we've kind of started to go down this road with the show of really golf performance. I think that's something that is kind of underserved in the space. You're not underserved with swing instruction, swing tips, equipment, PGA Tour highlights. All those things are things, if you're a golfer, you like, but what we really have enjoyed is just this idea at a high level of golf performance, and one of the best places to find it is in the college game, because it's a pretty open source type of conversation. You can get a college coach on there and they're going to tell you a lot about how they run their program or develop their players. You can get the players themselves on there. I mean, I remember interviewing Colin Morikawa a year ago after some success in the college ranks and asking him how he practices, what he focuses on, what he thinks is important, and you're not going to get that from a normal PGA Tour press conference, and so for me, that's what I've loved about the show, and that's where the questions have mostly come from. It's just that, understanding how to perform the best on the course. It's not about how the swing looks. It's not about, the what. It's like the how. And so we try and focus on that, and it definitely touches all the layers, both at the amateur level, the college level, and down into juniors. And so I think that's what people have enjoyed most about the show. I'm still trying. It's interesting being on Sirius XM. It's a wonderful group and organization, and we feel honored to be the only college show on a network that really focuses on the PGA Tour. They don't really tell you how many people are listening, so it's good that you're listening, along with my mom and maybe a couple relatives back in the Midwest. So we've added to our list today, which is good.
We're all going to get T-shirts made, so we'll send you one.
Yeah, I might send you a free hat or something. You never know. So. But it's been cool. It's hard to believe that we're in our third year doing it, and I've got a great partner there, Kyle Gentry, who I tell people is cooler than the other side of the pillow, or the other one, as he likes to say, could talk a dog off a meat wagon.
Nice.
So we're both those things are true, and he's been a great partner and does a lot of the research for the show. Actually, I just get to show up and ask questions and talk and connect with some old friends around the subject of college golf.
And how long have you been doing that?
Well, we're almost 3 years now. So it's
nice.
The backstory really quickly is that there's a wonderful guy named Scott Greenstein who has become a great friend through golf. He's a golf addict like we all are, and he was on campus one day, and he very, very just randomly popped into my office, and we struck up a conversation. And he's in charge of all the content on Sirius XM. So the PGA Tour network is near and dear to his heart, and as a golfer. And so he basically said, "Hey, have you ever considered doing a radio show?" And I'm like, "No, not at all. I've never been short on words, but I got a day job to worry about." And I said, "I appreciate the thought, but I probably am not going to pass." And he said, "Well, think about it. You can pick your own host and kind of your own time slot in the evenings, and make it convenient." And so he called me back, and I said, "Well, what the heck?" At the time I was cycling through, and it's a great organization, the College Golf Coaches Association of America, the GCAA.
Yep.
I was cycling through as the president of that organization, and I was just thinking about ways how to promote college golf. And I said, "Wow, if this is right in front of me, and I can spend an hour talking about college golf and growing the sport and giving back in some weird sort of way, I'm all in." So that's where it started, and I haven't really looked back, and they haven't canceled our show. That's how we, that's how we kind of measure our success. If we haven't gotten the hook yet, per se. So it's all good.
No, that sounds great. Well, I'm sure it keeps you on top of all the topics. I'm going to let you go, but I need to close this out for you. But I just wanted to hit on one random topic. Now, you started in '94. I'm sorry, you won the national championship in '94. You graduated in '97.
I was a freshman. Yeah, I was freshman in '93. Won the spring of '94. We won, and finished in '97.
Yeah, and then, but now fast forward. I wonder if you could tell me, because we're all gearheads and we like anything new and shiny. So you get the college bag and all that stuff. But I wonder if you could give me an idea of what was the bag and clothing that you received as a player at Stanford as opposed to what these guys get now?
Oh my God. That's been a huge transition. Yeah. We were talking about that the other day. I mean, Coach, there's two there's a funny story around that I could share, but basically it was like you'd get a sleeve of balls per tournament.
Okay.
We had 2 or 3 shirts. We had 2 or 3 pairs of pants, and if they fit, you were lucky. My first year, we had we carried ping bags, but that was when you had the wooden dowel. And
yes, I have one. I still have one of those.
Yeah, after about 2 weeks, the red Stanford bag would fade, and so it was a day too where they hadn't changed the amateurism rules, so equipment all had to be purchased by the given program. You wouldn't just get a box from a manufacturer if you were a top kid. So. The interesting part was there was incentive there to play well, because Wally Goodwin, who's a Hall of Fame guy here, wonderful guy and a huge part of my golf life and just general life. He's an awesome guy. And he basically, there was a vibe where you have better just have shot in the 60s if you were going to go ask him for anything. And so I think about that today sometimes when I got that kid that just rolls out a 76 in qualifying and he's coming to ask me for a new set of wedges, but
Right,
it's a different animal today, and so, you had to earn everything you got. And so that whole dynamic with equipment has really, really changed, and how easy it is to come by and how much companies are spending on equipment. The quick story I was going to tell was, I always loved when Tiger would qualify for big events outside of his college career. In my sophomore year, his freshman year, he played in the World Amateur right out of the gates, and I got to take his place. And for some reason, we were partnered with Bobby Jones at the time, and for some reason, Coach wanted to make sure my pants fit, and he ordered 44 waisted pants. And I'm like a 38. So I show up in Tokyo, Japan, wearing these 44s, and they were like cinched up with a piece of rope. And it was basically the joke of the entire trip, because I had these clothes that looked like I was a quadruple extra large trying to get around this hot, humid, hilly golf course in Fujikura, Japan. So nonetheless, a lot of fond memories, and man alive, though, things have changed when it comes to equipment.
Yeah. I saw firsthand what the Walker Cup team had, and I just was like, this is borderline ridiculous. I mean, you guys look like fashion models. I mean, it was crazy what they were wearing out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's changed a lot, and I think it's cool because it just shows that people are paying attention. Those people wouldn't be giving that free stuff out to the USGA or college programs if it didn't matter or have an impact, and that just tells me things are going the right direction for our sport, for sure.
Well, Coach, I really do appreciate the time. I know you're getting ready for your first tournament of the fall, looking to go back-to-back, as I'm sure you were eagerly anticipating another run at the National Championship. Hopefully we can do it again sometime soon. And thanks for stopping by the Back of the Range.
You bet. Great being with you today, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Coach Conrad Ray from Stanford for stopping by here at the Back of the Range. All the best to you, Coach, and Stanford, trying to go back-to-back at the NCAAs later in the spring. Remember, follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all the information needed in this podcast, and we'll see you again next week here at the Back of the Range.